What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily Podcast, powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Happy Friday. Getting a lot of questions about the portal, particularly the quarterback position. Miami has the best quarterback in the country, which they obtained through the portal. That is Cam Ward. What's next? A lot of questions, a lot of discussions. We will talk about it all. A lot of speculation, a lot of theories. We'll have some fun talking about some potential candidates in the portal, plus looking at historically what the portal has brought at that position. First, want to talk about some folks. You don't need to look elsewhere, too. You got them right there at home. Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. Pete, hop in.
What's going on, D? Excited to get into this topic. You know, we've said over the last few months we didn't want to speculate on portal quarterback stuff because it was just too early in the season. But we looked at the calendar yesterday and we realized, man, it's only about a month out here from when quarterbacks started visiting Miami last cycle, right? So you got to understand that it's going to be a crazy month coming up here and month plus. And look, there's no guarantees that Miami goes into the portal for a quarterback, but I would say that there's a good likelihood that it does happen.
Absolutely. And I think the key here is that Miami is in a position of power, even more so than the last time when they got Will Howard on campus, Cam Ward on campus, got plenty of attention for that spot. They're in a much better position now because of Cam Ward's success. So I'll tell you right now, when I talk about the bank, that's based on information. This is pure speculation we're talking about here. These names are not in the portal. They're focused on their own seasons, but we're going to look at kind of historically what the portal brings and then speculate on some potential names that could be a fit, see if they would be a fit, if not, and just kind of break those down. So this is pure speculation. Everybody's on their teams. No one's in the portal, but we're here to have fun and talk about some names that make sense.
So we'll start with 2020, which obviously that's when, you know, things really started to become a normal, you know, business practice in terms of guys moving. And this is the list right here. 3 guys that we're going to spotlight. Obviously, there were more across the country, but these 3 guys we will spotlight here.
And by the way, people were saying, well, we've talked about the portal this year. Why are you going back to 2020? We're going to first just go through every year to show you what's in the portal, what kind of players go in the portal, and then transition into some specific guys we're talking about. I think that'll help you understand the different categories because not every portal situation is the same. So here in 2020, it's the first year of the portal. Obviously, Miami benefited in a major way with De'Ara King. That was a coaching situation, a coaching change that didn't sit well with King, allowing a very productive player to go in the portal. With Talia Tagovailoa, who ended up being probably the best quarterback in Maryland history, at least recent history, he was a guy who just didn't get on the field at a big school. So those guys are available as well, guys that maybe didn't work out at the big school. Miami, of course, plays with these schools now as far as recruiting, so I guess Miami's a big school too. But these are guys that haven't played, that have potential that maybe you could scoop. Tagovailoa fits in there. He didn't play at Alabama. And then the Felipe Franks, this is the 5-star player that goes to a school, plays, and doesn't perform, end up getting him. He goes to Arkansas, rebuilds his stock, goes to the Senior Bowl. So the reason we're highlighting is to show the different types of quarterbacks. Because number one, history tends to repeat itself with these different categories. Number two, I want to show you what the general level of talent is. Obviously, the first year wasn't as good as it became down the road. 3, the Canes don't need to just take one transfer quarterback. You saw Oregon last year get Dylan Gabriel and Dante Moore. You saw Miami themselves get Cam Ward and Reese Poffenbarger. So we're laying out all the different types of quarterbacks that go in the portal. So Miami could potentially get 2 of these because they're not all in similar situations. Again, Tagovailoa, a guy that wasn't playing that you get as a young player. Franks, you get as sort of a faded player. King, very productive player. He had been on a streak of running and passing touchdowns in the same game. I think it was about like a 15-game streak. Miami gets him in his prime, and of course, he has a great season. So this is the beginning of the portal process.
So moving on to the next year, 2021, Joe Milton, Will Levis, and Hendon Hooker, as you guys see who are watching on YouTube right now. And yeah, we'll go through each of these guys here. All three of these guys with a a good amount of athletic ability and physical traits for sure.
Yeah, all three pros. And I think this is an example of something Miami could do in the portal. With Milton and Hooker, they took two guys. I mean, Tennessee took two guys, let them battle it out. And they both ended up making the NFL. So that's one approach Miami could take, is just take two really talented guys, let them battle it out. Will Levis, a talented guy at Penn State, Kentucky took him. He became a second-round pick. So with 21, I think the lesson here is there's guys with traits in the portal, physical traits, NFL physical traits, who may not have the highest value when you get them. But if you bring them in and put them in your system, they could become NFL players. All three of these guys fit that bill. I think that's something to consider. This is really more my mindset, not saying these exact type of players, but just in general. When you target physical traits in the portal, especially at a discount, you could end up with NFL players down the road, these three being examples. And to me, the glaring example is Milton and Hooker. You take two guys and have them battle it out. Miami could go down that route. I don't think they will, but it's been done.
2022, this is when things really start to pick up, as we'll see here in these next few years here that we're going to highlight. Jaden Daniels, everyone knows his story. Arizona State to LSU, was at Arizona State for 3 years, then plays 2 years at LSU and ends up becoming the Heisman Trophy winner. And we've seen what he's done here in the NFL already. Jackson Dart, when Caleb Williams goes to USC, comes over to Ole Miss. Bo Nix, a lot of Auburn fans didn't like him, man, but he had a lot of ability, and the situation in Oregon was much better for him over there. Dillon Gabriel, we'll see his name again, but this is his first move from UCF to Oklahoma, Penix, Indiana to Washington, and then Spencer Rattler, OU to USC East there, South Carolina, who, for those who don't know the reference there.
Yeah, so, I mean, you got 6 pros right here, including Heisman Trophy winner, Rookie of the Year, probably Jaden Daniels. Bo Nix playing great in the pros. Michael Penix took his team to the national championship. Gabriel, all kinds of passing records. Jackson Dart having a really, really good year. Spencer Rattler, another NFL player for the Saints. So different categories here, but I think this is really when you start to see the blueprint take hold. Miami last year got Cam Ward, which we'll talk about, top of his game. There's another category where you're just getting talented players that haven't met their potential. You saw some of that in that 21 class we looked at with those big athletic guys. Here, these are 5-star players that are not 5 stars when you get them in the portal, meaning you're not paying a premium to get them when you get them. Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, Spencer Rattler, all three big-time recruits, but you're getting them with a little bit of fade on them. Jaden Daniels was not beloved at Arizona State. Bo Nix was not beloved at all at Auburn by the fans. Spencer Rattler, beat out by Caleb Williams, kind of a negative reputation. So you get these 5-star players, but they're a little humbled. You get them when they've got a little bit of dirt on them, and you bring them in. And then with a good system, their talent rises to the top, and you have success and NFL players at quarterback. This is one route I think might be a take. We'll talk about it when we talk about some of these potential quarterbacks, but this is what I call the faded 5-star route. Jackson Dart's a situation where it's like pool balls, like when you're playing pool. Something on one side of the table could affect something on the other side of the table. You don't even know how it plays out. With Dart, Lincoln Riley going to USC caused him to leave USC, even though he was a really good player already, had played as a true freshman, and Lincoln Riley was a quarterback guru because Lincoln Riley brought Caleb Williams. So that forced Dart on the market when otherwise a talented freshman quarterback wouldn't be on the market like that. Ole Miss capitalized. Lane Kiffin did a great job with them. The rest is history. So this is just kind of circumstantial. This is how all these moves sort of affect each other, and it could get a guy like Dart available who we sitting here right now, not knowing all the coaching carousel, don't realize will be on the market. Dillon Gabriels are kind of your classic portal where going from a smaller school to a big school. And then Penix, it was a coaching change where Kalen DeBoer, who's at Indiana with Penix, brought him with him to Washington, knew the player. Shannon Dawson is going to be a hot commodity this year as an offensive coordinator for the #1 offense in the country. If he leaves, could the offensive coordinator that you bring back in bring someone with him that he's familiar with. So that's, these are all very good players, a lot of first rounders here, a lot of very talented guys. So something to keep an eye on, different situations for all, but I want you to highlight these different situations to keep in mind when we look at this next portal class.
2023, Sam Hartman, Luke Altmaier, Shedeur Sanders, Devin Leary, and Haynes King, to name a few here, D.
Yeah, this is more of a cautionary tale here because this was not a great class, and guys that you thought would be good were not that good. Shedeur Sanders is great. That was kind of a unique situation with his dad. Hartman, you thought he'd be okay, goes to Notre Dame, really doesn't perform to what he did at Wake Forest. Devin Leary looked like a stud at NC State, goes to Kentucky, not quite the same player. Luke Altmaier ended up being a good player. You took a talented guy. This is the fallout from a Jackson Dart going to Ole Miss. A guy like Altmaier comes available, and he ended up being much better for Illinois than Ole Miss. Haynes King, similar situation. You get a young player with some talent, and then you cultivate it in your system. I'm not sure Miami's going to go down that route because they want an instant contributor who's ready to play. But this to me is a warning sign. It's not, the supply is not always going to be there. But you got to be ready, and you got to make sure these guys come into a good situation. Leary, I think, is one where he really should have been much more successful than he was based on what he showed you at NC State. But Kentucky just didn't have a very good situation for him. There was a lot of stuff wrong with that team and that system when he got there. And they ended up wasting it. Still an NFL quarterback, 6th round pick. Probably would have been a higher pick if he went to a better situation.
2024, this is obviously this year, and a lot of the moves we're very familiar with. Cam Ward, Will Howard. Miami was obviously in on Howard as well. Dylan Gabriel now making his second move from Oklahoma to Oregon. Riley Leonard, Duke to Notre Dame. Diego Pavia, New Mexico State to Vanderbilt. Been very successful this year. He's trying to get another year eligibility as well. Eli Holstein, a guy that Bama actually signed when Saban was still there. Pitt goes to Pitt. They're having a good season. And then Dante Moore, Michigan to Oregon, and he's been sitting this year behind Gabriel.
Yeah, so obviously we know how the Ward story turned out. You got an elite player that is playing at that level, and then you bring him in to a good system, and he ends up compete for a Heisman. We know how that story ended. That's premium, expensive, top of the market talent. You hope someone like that comes available. Will Howard, sort of next up there. Dylan Gabriel. These are guys Miami pursued. The one that's interesting to me on this list, from a Miami perspective, is something like a Dante Moore, because you see Oregon took the faded 5-star Dante Moore, similar to like a Jaden Daniels kind of guy, or Bo Nix, not quite as experienced, but he did start games, and you pair him with a Dylan Gabriel. So you can kind of play both sides. You get a proven guy, but then also get a young guy with some fade on him.
I mean, look, I would love to get a situation like that. I think it takes a lot from the player, and you got to give Dante Moore a ton of credit for kind of eating it this year. I guess he redshirted last year, so this is, it's a year to learn. But at the end of the day, you already had to sit a year, right? So it's going to take a unique kid to kind of convince that situation to, because these guys, even as faded 5-stars as you call them, they're looking to go and play somewhere. So I would love that situation. I agree with you, D. It will take a guy who really is, willing to buy in. So that'll be an interesting situation.
All right, so see some potential candidates here for the Canes.
Yeah, and look, a lot of these names have been thrown around on social media, and fans have speculated here. But we'll kind of go through the list. DJ Lagway from Florida. Obviously, Jackson Arnold at Oklahoma, John Mateer, Washington State, Avery Johnson, Kansas State, Fernando Mendoza, Cal, CJ Bailey, and then Kyron Drones, who had a great game against Miami this year. And we've put these guys all on here for different reasons, of course, and a lot of it's speculation. But I'm actually missing one on this list also, D, that we had on the list, Garrett Nussmeier from LSU. So that's my fault.
I'll save that curveball for the end. We'll save that curveball for the end. But let's start with Drones here. Drones, I think you hope to be playing better to make this more realistic. He's just been injured, so that's hurt his ability to be an option that is an obvious option, which is what you hoped he'd become because of the ties. He's a guy that saw with Cam Ward, he's a distant cousin of, firsthand what happened when you put a talented quarterback behind a good offensive line with good running game and good receivers. A lot of physical talent. He played his best game of the season against Miami, which is not unusual. There's got probably a couple guys on this list with that credential. But you like the physical tools. You like what he could be in the system. The issue with Drones is just he hasn't had that standout season where you could say you feel comfortable plugging him in to replace a Cam Ward. You can see the upside with the size, with the physicality, and with the athletic ability. But because of his injuries this year, he hasn't had that kind of standout all-conference year that would make your fan base and your recruits and your transfer portal guys feel good about Drones.
Agreed. Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of physical upside there, but there's still probably a little bit more development, in terms of quarterback wise that you would have hoped would have happened at this point. I'm not going to completely rule him out, especially with the family ties with Cam Ward. But I don't know if the offense would look exactly how it looks this year, which might be the case with a few of these guys on the list.
Another guy,
quite frankly.
Oh yeah, another guy. But again, if this is the direction you want to go, it's not going to be hard to convince a guy like Drones to come to Miami because of the Ward model. Similarly, John Mateer from Washington State. This is the guy that replaced Cam Ward at Washington State. He's got Washington State ranked. He's playing very, very well. Obviously, the competition is not as good as it was last year for that team in the Pac-12. But Mateer, really athletic gamer. The throwing is not what Ward has, both in terms of an arm strength perspective and just an overall polish and finesse. But he does complete passes. He has an instinct for passing. He's a gamer. He's a playmaker. I just, the passing is going to be the question when you talk about ACC competition week in, week out. But I know, P, I know you've had this name floated to you by scouts for Miami.
Yeah, early in the season, like maybe a month into the season, a scout had called me who's familiar with Cam Ward as a prospect and, familiar also with Mateer, and said, man, not the same player as Ward, really, really good athlete, still has some development as a passer to go. But I think Miami should keep their eyes on him, especially with the success, obviously, they're having with Ward. It's an easy tie to make. Again, I don't know if the offense would be what it looks like now in terms of spreading it out like that. There'd probably be more designed quarterback runs with him, but it's an intriguing option for sure. And a guy who I think has multiple years, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's a sophomore this year,
and he's been productive. So you're not just betting on the upside, which is
right.
One way to go about it. This would be again. We're looking at the reason we did this history lesson is what buckets do these guys fit in. I would put Mateer kind of in like a Diego Pavia bucket, where this guy was a player, he was a winner, and he's not perfect as far as the profile, but then you put him in a good team in big games, and the competitiveness, the gamer instincts, the productivity that he's shown translates, the athletic ability. So I think if you saw what Pavia did to teams like Alabama, you could see a Mateer doing similar things with a better team around him. And I think that's the intrigue of a guy like Mateer.
So I'll let you pick the next guy here.
So I'll pick two, and I'll talk about them separately because I put them in the same bucket, which is going to be CJ Bailey from NC State and Fernando Mendoza from California. Obviously, both ACC players, both South Florida players, both tall players. Mendoza's a sophomore. Bailey's a freshman. Both of them started as true freshmen, so they got a lot of experience. Both guys really, really smart. And these are guys that make good decisions, that are winners. They won in high school. Mendoza at Christopher Columbus, Bailey at Chaminade. So they're both good, intangible guys, and they have the tangible of height. I think.
Wait, I'm gonna need you to repeat that. D, you said he was. Where did Mendoza go to high school? You said he was smart. He's got all the intangibles. I've never heard you talk about a Columbus guy like that, man.
Well, he went to Belen first, but he wanted. I think he wanted some more speed around him, so he sacrificed some academics to have better receivers at Columbus. Is how this thing turned out.
Got it. Okay, there's always a reason, right?
That's the truth. So, but with Bailey, he certainly didn't have to worry about receivers, right? He was throwing it to Jeremiah Smith and JoJo Trader. If I'm comparing the two, I do think that Bailey has the higher upside. He's a little bigger. He's more athletic, although Mendoza, I think, has shown more athleticism than I thought he had. Bailey is really a nice athlete at 6'6", with a nice wiry frame. He'll gain weight. big hands, he handles the ball easily, and then his mechanics are unusual, but I think he does have more juice than Mendoza. I think Mendoza's got pretty good arm, getting better every game, every season. Bailey has a very good arm with potential to be really, really good as he tightens up those mechanics. I just see the upside with Bailey, while still not the fact that he's producing as a true freshman. He's in the ACC, so you're not like he's not an unpolished player or a total, boom or bust. He's played already in the ACC, but he's still got a significant upside. You didn't recruit him at first. You tried to recruit him late last year out of high school. He eventually said, listen, NC State took me here or was on me first. They've been with me the whole time. I'm going to go with them. But if you're Miami and you're Bailey, you're saying, okay, he makes more sense for us now that we've seen him play in the ACC, and Bailey Miami makes more sense for Bailey because of the offensive line, because of the talent around him, the fact that NC State's not exactly firing on all cylinders around him. It makes sense for both parties. It's actually better off, I think, that both parties didn't get together at first, because he was able to prove himself on the field as a starting quarterback. Miami was able to show what they have around them. So it could make sense. I don't know if it will, but between these two local options, and I do think Mendoza is going to be a very good player. He's only going into his junior year. He's got 2 years of eligibility, 3 years for Bailey. But I can see him going to like a Big Ten school and thriving. Talking about Mendoza, but Bailey behind this offensive line with these receivers, I could see him being a very, very interesting guy. Of all these names, he's the one that really, it seems like it's making sense, but there's a guy that did not choose us out of high school, so there's work to do there.
And then a couple more guys here to get to. Avery Johnson, who you see right there in the middle, Kansas State. DJ Lagway. Have we talked about Jackson Arnold yet? I don't think so.
No, so let's start with Johnson, because this is an interesting one, because he's a runner, similar to Mateer in a lot of ways, but I think even more of a runner, probably more athletic. I mean, this guy's a really special athlete, Avery Johnson, at the as far as running. His passing game has not come along to the degree that you might want if you're a team that is going to be a passing offense like the Miami Hurricanes, where you have a lot of good receivers that need the ball, a lot of good tight ends that need the ball, but that's part of the sell, right? That you help them with that. 17 touchdowns, 7 INTs passing, about almost 2,000 yards. Again, not the most prolific passer in the world, 61% completion percentage, but then rushing the ball is where you see a major edge with Avery Johnson compared to a lot of quarterbacks. 391 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, had 7 touchdowns last year, 5.4 yards a carry. I think he's even better than that. He has more to him than that. So the key, people are saying, why would Avery Johnson even consider Miami? Number one, he considered Miami out of high school a little bit, ended up going to Kansas State. You have, he's from Kansas, but the guy that recruited him to Kansas, Colin Klein, former Kansas State quarterback, now at Texas A&M. His name's been linked to Texas A&M potentially, but they have their own quarterback who's doing well, a young true freshman who's winning games for them, so they might roll with him. Connor Wegman enters the portal. Avery Johnson looks elsewhere. So this guy's having success at Kansas State. He's from Kansas. It's not a lock to be in the portal, but you've heard so much buzz about him potentially looking at other schools. You have to talk about him. And the fit at Miami, he's a great athlete. He can make a lot of plays. You can help him with his passing because of the pass protection and the receivers. And he was a guy who flirted with Miami early on in that that 2023 class before Miami went with Jaden Rashada.
I just got some bad flashbacks when you mentioned Colin Klein, D. When he was quarterback at Kansas State. I played against
Not that
Miami.
much different. I mean, a running quarterback. I think he felt
Klein was a big, powerful runner.
And he probably thought he fit better in that system. That's not going to happen. Now, does Miami run a system like that? Not necessarily, but maybe he wants to work on his passing. And he's good. If you want to work on your passing, where are you going to have better receivers? Miami or Kansas State? So people might be surprised to see this name here because his team is doing relatively well and he's from Kansas, but there's been persistent rumors that Avery Johnson could be looking around.
Then you have Jackson Arnold at Oklahoma, which, he's had his ups and downs. He's been hurt as well. And Oklahoma's not having a great season, but very talented former 5-star. Yeah,
so Lagway and Arnold are in the, I don't want to call them faded 5-stars because I'm not sure that Lagway's faded necessarily, but they're 5-star guys who could need a change of scenery. I think right now Arnold looking more likely than Lagway. With Lagway, he's so tied to Billy Napier, and they clearly, with the AD saying Napier's going to come back for another year, I think that was aimed directly at keeping Lagway But now, look, they're playing LSU at home. If they lose that one ugly, then they got to go to Ole Miss. That could be a slide there where maybe they revisit the Napier vote of confidence, right? But if Napier stays, I think you see Lagway stay. He'd be of all these guys. He might be my number one pick just because of the upside he has, the physicality. Put him behind. He reminds me a little bit of a Bo Nix, 5-star player, can run, decent size, good thrower, good intangibles, productive. They've had nothing at Oklahoma. I think they were down to their 6th receiver. Their first 5 receivers were injured. Offensive line's fallen off a cliff. Running game has fallen off a cliff. So Arnold has not put together the stats you want to see. But this is the same guy that caused Dylan Gabriel to go to Oregon. Dylan Gabriel went to Oregon after a year of Arnold making plays in practice. So that tells you what Arnold can do when he has good players around him. I could see him going to a team like Miami with the good offensive line and having a similar trajectory to Bo Nix. Bo Nix played more, but Arnold has played and started plenty of games. I could see that. Based on the way he's played this year, there's going to be a hard sell to your fan base. So I'm not sure the timing is just going to work out, but I could see a scenario where Jackson Arnold is Miami's Bo Nix.
And then Lagway, you mentioned, obviously, if Napier stays, it's going to be tougher to expect that he enters the portal there. But I mean, I also still wouldn't count it out, even though they did make that move to keep him there. What a talent he is, though.
Love him. And he was there on the sidelines watching Cam Ward become a national name. And I'm wondering if he said, hey, I should be as famous as that guy. I should have the whole country doing my dance if I had this kind of offensive line in front of me. So I'm sure those thoughts are there. Texas guy. We'll see how that plays out. I think we cheer for Florida to lose anyways, but even more so lately. But I'm going to give you the ultimate curveball. You kind of hinted at this, Pete, when we talked about the graphic missing a name. This, to me, is my dream scenario. I don't think it's likely at all, but it's not totally out of the realm of possibility when you really break down the different components. And that is Garrett Nussmeier, to me, the best quarterback, not named Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders in the country. Just a quick trigger, natural passer, great pocket movement, extremely difficult to sack. Coach's son, super smart, super tough. I absolutely love Garrett Nussmeier. I think he is a future first-round draft pick at quarterback. So you say, why would this guy leave LSU? A couple things. And this is not based on info. This is just projecting things that could happen. There's more pie in the sky than some other ideas, but bear with me. LSU, 6-3 right now. They're not going anywhere. They're off. Their defense stinks. They're going to lose their number one receiver in Lacey, plus their 2 great tackles, Will Campbell and Emory Jones. So those guys are gone. You look at Nussmeier, he's a starting quarterback, obviously, but LSU is going to bring in the number one quarterback in the country at a high school in Bryce Underwood. You saw this. You saw the story from national outlets that Barstool Sports was trying to put a $10 million NIL offer in front of Bryce Underwood to go to Michigan, and he said most likely the answer is no. He's going to stay with his commitment to LSU, which begs the question, what's LSU paying to keep him, and what are they promising to him to keep him? You saw Lagway, what he did to Graham Mertz. Even with Mertz coming in as a top quarterback, maybe not as highly touted as Nussmeier, Mertz had NFL buzz, and he still had to worry about Lagway's footsteps. What happens when you bring in an Underwood and you're paying him more than you're paying Nussmeier? Do you have to pay Nussmeier, the starting quarterback, equal or more to get him to stay? Now you got all this money wrapped up in quarterbacks, and you have to replace your offensive line, you have to sign a recruiting class, your defense stinks. It becomes unwieldy. Also, the Nussmeier's dad coached with Mario Cristobal at Alabama. What happens if Dawson goes to get a head coaching job somewhere and Miami needs a new offensive coordinator? Could you get Nussmeier and his dad? He was a candidate the first time when you hired Shannon Dawson. Ended up being the quarterback coach for the Eagles. And, of course, the son is a starting quarterback for LSU. Now, Nussmeier might say, all right, you can stay, of course. Or he could, maybe he'll say, I'm not going to stay, but I'll go pro. I've had a good enough year. I'll be maybe a late first-round pick. But Nussmeier's dad's a coach. He's seen the quarterback process and guys that have succeeded and guys that have been bust. And the number one factor with quarterbacks, as far as who's been successful and who's not, out of first-round picks, has been snaps. Guys that play a lot like Jaden Daniels, who started for 4+ years, Bo Nix, who I think started for 5 years. Those are the guys that are going to the league and having success. A guy like Mitch Trubisky a few years ago, Anthony Richardson a couple years ago. Those guys that are one-year wonders have struggled immensely. So Nussmeier's dad might say, listen, whether it's at LSU or somewhere else, you should be playing college for a year and then be a first-round pick with reps under your belt. And if that's the case, who's to say you can't slide the Cam Ward number right under Nussmeier's nose? Give him a great offensive line, give him good receivers, give him a good running game. Makes sense. I'm not saying it's likely. I'm not reporting anything. Maybe I'm just, fantasy booking because this is my favorite quarterback. This is the guy I want. But when you see the numbers attached to Bryce Underwood, it starts to make you think a little bit.
Listen, man, might have to send you in the recruiting room if he enters the portal, man. Sounds like you've sold it to yourself for sure. So we'll see. We'll see if he sees it the same way. But no, that would be, out of all the options, he's the most established one. He's played and won in big games in the SEC now, and I mean, he has the looks of a potential first rounder. Maybe this year, like you said. You do make a good point with the lack of experience in terms of needing to play even more games, which helps at the next level. But yeah, that would be a great one.
Yeah, and look, the point is, we went through all those guys earlier in the podcast for a reason. These are fluid situations. There's a lot of variables. It's a dynamic process. You don't know who's going to come available, how one decision from a coaching staff, how one coach change, how different one guy going pro, one guy not going pro, how these things affect numerous other things and then force reshuffling. You saw Jackson Arnold as a 5-star force Dylan Gabriel to Oregon. You saw Avery Johnson as a highly ranked young player force Will Howard to Ohio State. These are top 5 teams. Quarterbacks were almost shoved out by some of these young players who, by the way, we are now talking about as potential transfers. So it's a very dynamic process, very fluid. Pay attention, CanesInSight.com. We will be giving you the absolute latest on all of this. We have a whole transfer portal board. It's going to be a lot of fun to follow. And we still got recruiting. So, Pete, why don't we talk about, we don't got a Beacon Adjusters player of the game. There's no game being played. But I want to highlight a recruit that we haven't really talked about too much.
Yeah, and I'm gonna pull up his highlights now, D. But Amari Wallace, central safety, nickel. Everyone's talking about the potential flipping of Hanks and Pickett down the stretch here. Obviously, that's one of the staff's huge focuses at this point. But this is a guy, obviously had a pretty bad leg injury, broken leg before the season in a scrimmage, and did not play this year. But he's someone that people have kind of completely forgotten about at this point because he didn't play this year, but someone that I think we should remind people what a great football player this is. And, there's no reason to believe he can't make a full recovery here.
Yeah, broken leg. And Paul George had a similar injury. Bones typically heal better than muscle, ligaments.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not a doctor, but that's typically how it goes. He's a young kid. He's got a lot of room to grow. But, man, total playmaker, not going to blow you away with his physical attributes, but somebody who you see him blocking kicks. You see him getting interceptions, which is something that typically translates when you get a lot of interceptions. We saw that with Cam Kitchens. He's been compared to Cam Kitchens before. He's a hard hitter. He's a multi-year starter. He's extremely productive at Central, a school that plays unbelievable defense. He did not take very long to make an impact. And he has versatility. You can put him in nickel. He has some coverage ability, but he also has range. And this is a secondary that needs help. It needs football players. It just needs juice. This is not a guy who's learning how to play safety, learning how to play defensive back. He's been playing it at a high level for a long time. I think that's something that's missing right now with the defensive back group, is just true ballers, guys that you could trust to come down the alley and make a tackle, who are not afraid to throw their body out there, but at the same time play under control and play with instincts and don't just run around. Guys that can play the ball in the air and get the versatility. You can put him at nickel, you can put him at safety, and then of course you can block kicks on special teams, which is a great sign of explosiveness and timing and motor. I'm a big fan of Amari Wallace. The health is the big story with him. He's got to be healthy, but there's a reason why he's been compared to someone like Cam Kitchens. It's because he was productive in South Florida, in Dade County for many, many years, both making tackles, recovering fumbles, and what you see here on this clip and in so many other clips, getting interceptions.
I have a different comparison, D, and it's someone who I believe you made a post about the other day on the CanesInSight forums, and you said that, again, I'm pretty sure it was you who made this post, but said, look, if the defense had this guy this year, everyone's saying Cam Kitchens, but Jaquan Johnson, former Miami safety, and Killian, great. I probably saw him play 10 to 15 times in high school since his sophomore year on, and he was always around the football. Was not the fastest guy, wasn't the twitchiest guy, but was a physical tackler, always around the ball. I mean, had how many big plays that year that Miami had that run, to the Orange Bowl with Richt. But yeah, man, to me, that's who he kind of reminds me of, the way that he's, lining up over the slot sometimes here, a deep guy. You see the plays on special teams. So that would be my comparison for him.
And I remember Jaquan blocking kicks. And doing those,
exactly.
Just being an all-around player. You see him on kickoff coverage right here. Just being a football player. I mean, it's a cliche, but to me, football player means you have good instincts, means you're a good tackler, means you're versatile, means you're consistent. And football players usually play early in their high schools because they're instinctual, and that's what Amari Wallace is. There you see him on a blitz with good timing. Not going to be the fastest, not going to be the strongest, similar to Jaquan in that respect, but plays fast, plays smart, and is just your typical Dade County baller. I hope he gets well, because I do think he has a bright future with the Miami Hurricanes.
Yeah, man. Everyone has been talking about this safety class, talking about Drake Stubbs, Bryce Fitzgerald, but he needs to be remembered in that mix, D.
And nickel. So he could do quite a bit.
Yeah, and nickel too, yeah.
If your property has been affected by Hurricane Helene or Milton, Beacon Adjustors Group is here to help. With years of experience handling storm-related damage, we work tirelessly to ensure you get the compensation you deserve. From assessment to settlement, our team of trusted experts will guide you every step of the way. Don't face the aftermath alone. Let Beacon Adjustors Group restore your peace of mind. Call us today, 954-466-4224. So a lot of speculation. I'm sure the comments will be giving their thoughts, but I think it's important to start this discussion now. I can tell you Miami is monitoring and on top of it. There's only so much they can do. They're not tampering with anybody. Guys are still in their teams trying to win games. But Miami is very mindful of the whole landscape. And I think they're also, they like Emory Williams, what he's done in practice. So we'll see how this whole thing shakes up. But I think because of Cam Ward's success, because of what you have coming back on the offensive line, this is going to be a very, very desirable location for any quarterback.
Should be fun to track, man. We've got a busy next 6 weeks ahead with this, and again, we'll be covering it all. I'm sure we'll have a ton of content from this, so I'm excited to follow this portal journey, man. Last year was it was a roller coaster. That's one way to put it, for sure. So there was lots of twists and turns with that one, and I'm sure it's going to be no different this year, D.
Yeah, and stay tuned on the CanesInSight.com message board. 7 million posts and counting. Our transfer portal board is going to have every one of these candidates fully vetted, as you will see. They've already been the topic of much discussion on top of all the recruiting news. And look, it's starting to get cold. I see the jackets starting to pop up. Certainly down here in South Florida, as you get up north, I'm sure you've had the jackets on for a while. But look, Canes fans, the Hurricane Team Store is celebrating its first birthday, and you're invited to join the party. From now until tomorrow, November 16th, enjoy 20% off everything store-wide. That's 20% off all the Miami gear you love, perfect for repping your Canes in style. Swing by the Thesis Hotel right in front of the campus on South Dixie Highway to gear up and save. Big exclusions apply. You can also go to MiamiHTS.com. For the internet site, get 20% off. And here's the good news. Look, if you missed this sale, all you got to use is promo code INSIGHT20. You get 20% off your first item anyways. So you got a lot of ways to save money with some of this great gear. There's the Camp for Heisman shirt. Keep the campaign going, especially after hopefully a great performance next week against Wake Forest.
All right. Well, appreciate everyone for tuning in today. Like and subscribe. Go Canes.
Go Canes.
This an insight to the Canes, and you know we ain't playing no games. Joaquin said dominate, so that's what we do. Home of the legends and 7th floor crew. Down in Miami where hurricanes brew. You here for the rumors, we bring you the news. Cause it's all about the you. And nobody do it like CanesInSight. Nobody do it like CanesInSight. Nobody do it like CanesInSight. Nobody do it CanesInSight.